So here's a kind of a question, a little bit different question, more of a meta question. There's this interview that I recently caught a snippet of an interview with Peter Thiel with the New York Times, which I thought was like a cool crossover of worlds that rarely meet. And he said this one thing that in this clip that was really striking, which is that as a society, we used to talk about moonshots like as something that we were doing, right? And now moonshots are used as a way of describing something that's never going to happen. Oh, that's a moonshot. And the same thing for the Apollo program. Like we used to talk about doing the Apollo program, and now people use it in a negative sense. They say, well, this isn't going to require, we can do this. It's not going to require an Apollo program. Or the opposite, like we can't do this. It would take a whole Apollo program or a Manhattan Project, right? Or whatever. So yeah, my question to you is that what's needed to figure out the origin of life? Like, do we need a Manhattan Project to find the origin of life? Or like what's really needed?
I would say a current problem in the field of the origin of life is there's many different people working on it in different departments doing different things that are not overall coordinated into some joint effort. And I think that if efforts were combined more cohesively, then that would be a very positive force for actually having high impact origin of life research. So in that sense, yes, I do think there should be some sort of Apollo program, so to speak.
Is it a question of funding? Because we are spending hundreds of billions of dollars for quantum computing, for example, but this is like the most compelling question that you could imagine, like the origin of life or the origin of universe, origin of life. Yeah. These big questions, why don't we pour money into that?
Right, great. So, there is a funding problem for sure. And it is very... is it expected or not? The origin of life is a very fundamental question, yet there is not a major research focus on it in terms of the funding.
It feels like a lot of origin of life research is done by scientists that have already succeeded, so they have a little bit of leeway to like work on something fun.
Correct.
Right. So it's kind of unique, actually. You're one of the
I'm early retirement project. You've done your major stuff. Yeah. You got your career done.
It's like it's something you get to work on if you win a Nobel Prize or something like that.
Well, so I'm still a scientist in training. I'm still doing my PhD. So I've been working on this sort of as a side project essentially, and I've been doing it since I've been thinking about it since high school really, and I did some work on it in my undergrad, which was full time. But yeah, I think we would really benefit from there being a concerted effort with large scale sort of collaborative projects, uniting people from different backgrounds, and I think. It shouldn't be dominated by any particular type of scientist. I think all scientists are interested in big questions. To some extent, interested in big questions at least. And the origin of life is one of the biggest mysteries of all. So many people should be interested. And many physicists have thought about the origin of life. Computer scientists like Alan Turing and John von Neumann have thought about the origin of life. Freeman Dyson has written an excellent book on the origin of life. And it should be a collaborative effort of scientists, not any particular like biochemists dominating a particular aspect of the origin of life. It's a collective collaborative effort. And I think that would be a very positive development. So I think, there should be more funding into this sort of basic area of research. It's one of the biggest questions that any of us could ask. But that being said, there still are many, many expert leading scientists who have spent their careers working on the origin of life, even though they hadn't won Nobel Prizes. And so there's been some very excellent work done by people like that. In particular, for example, people doing work on in vitro evolution. So another practical way you can go about doing origin of life research is by tying it in with real biology that people, not that this is real too, but tying it in with like goals that many people would have. So here's an example.
Goals that coincide with pharma, basically.
Correct. So here's an example. Here's an example. So the mRNA vaccines were essentially lipid nanoparticles with an RNA inside. That's a condensate. That is a vesicle with RNA in it. It's obviously very different biochemically than what the origin of life would have been, and in particular because the bases in the RNA are modified chemically, some of them, to stabilize the molecule. But that is an example of something where there's a link. Another link is in generating functional RNAs out of a random space. So I talked about there being 4 to the K possible RNAs, a large part of biochemical, certain biotech research. So Manfred Eigen coined the term evolutionary biotechnology. So essentially using principles of evolutionary biology to work on biotech. So like given a bunch of RNAs, you can evolve them to do things that are useful, like act as aptamers, act as things to bind drug targets, essentially. So that is functional research. And some people doing origin of life research also do this, sort of to like add to their goals. And so I think, because this is such a fundamental question, like there are going to be lots of, we see this time and time again, is basic research produces functional results that are very useful. So, that's something to think about.
So let's say if you were given unlimited resources, what would you still continue doing your research, or would you start another moonshot?
So I'm very I'm working on a problem that I'm very passionate about. So I would still continue that. I'm very passionate about decoding the human genome, which is my main sort of research. The DNA genome was sequenced in the early 2000s, and that was completed. So we have the sequence. Now that we have the sequence, the question is, what does it do? And that was part of what's called the ENCODE project, and that's still ongoing. So I'm very much interested in that. I think that's also a very big question, a very important question. But admittedly, I do spend less time than I'd like working on the origin of life, because there isn't enough expertise around me, for example, that work, like nobody in my department or other departments are really working on it. And so, there are people, there are places of that sort of thing, like the Santa Fe Institute, for example, historically has had a very strong theoretical biology, like under Stuart Kaufman, working on the origin of life. And that stuff's pretty rare though, right? And so I think we need more stuff like that, right? We need more sort of like interdisciplinary systems level complexity science type institutes, like for example, like the Santa Fe, for example.
Is there a roadmap for origin of life research? So, for instance, in astrophysics, there's the astrodecadal. It's a roadmap for what is important the next 10 years. Does something like this even exist in origin of life research, where someone has mapped
sort
out
of a roadmap
these are the questions we need to answer. These are the experiments we need to do.
Yeah.
So that people, because for a lot of people, as you said, they come from different fields, but if they have a template like that, they can pick and choose.
Yeah. So there isn't really such a thing like that everyone's aware of, like the 10 commandments of the origin of life, like what we have to do next. There isn't really that sort of thing. And, part of that is because lots of people are doing it in their free time, or they're doing it as sort of a side project, or they're already famous from something else. And this is sort of their retirement project, essentially. So, there's a lot of different things like that, but, yeah, we would, that would be very, very useful.
You should start assembling that. We should start assembling that. Mike's going to fund it.
we could consider that.
By the way, do you have any thoughts how to make the field sexier?
In what sense?
What do you mean? It is sexy.
Well, you said that somehow you need more people to come in,
right.
So it's like somehow research is something holds back.
Yeah, I think part of it is there's sort of a siloed in approach that many experts take. That you don't have the background in something, or you're not in our field, like biochemists saying you're not a biochemist. So for example, Chargaff, who's a famous biochemist, who developed the Chargaff base pairing rules, which that A pairs with T and C pairs with G. He famously dismissed Watson and Crick for being amateurs. You guys aren't formally trained biochemists, so get out of here. Why are you wasting my time? You don't even know the difference between a purine and a pyrimidine. Why are you wasting my time? And that approach we need to totally eliminate, I think, from science. It's very distracting, and it holds people back. And that's why interdisciplinary science is very important. And I think everyone from different backgrounds should work together to solve these cutting edge problems. That being said, knowing what you're doing is very important. Training is important, of course, but we need to sort of be more loose in how we define fields and the boundaries between fields. That would attract more people in, essentially. So I think that would be an example of how to make it more appealing, let's say.
I think also I have some thoughts on this. I've been thinking about origin of life a lot, and searching for even for guests for the podcast and so on about origins.
How do we increase the number of viewers?
Yeah. How do we get the
origin of life episodes?
How do we get the origin of life episodes to have the same number of viewers as the quantum computing episode? I think part of it is also that people don't feel. I think there's not. This is the kind of problem that has this feeling that it's always 30 years away, right? And I do think that the solution is always 30 years away. So I think also just getting this kind of thing, like a roadmap, and just more understanding of what are the things that have to be done to really crack the case? And do we even know them? Because sometimes if you don't even know what to do, like we still have to discover what needs to be done. That's naturally going to be less. Like I think in quantum computing, everybody knows like we need lower error rates, we need more qubits. Like it's really clear, and those kinds of things feel to people like, okay, I know what I need to do.
And the
Let's
big
get in
players
there.
are involved.
Yeah, that's true. And it also is connected. There's, what it really is like, there needs to be like a Shor's algorithm kind of thing where everybody knows like if this is cracked, something very valuable comes out of it. And I think answering the big questions is very valuable, but it's kind of vague. So maybe we also need to think about like, if we could synthesize life, right, from abiotic sources, what does that give us, right?
Yeah,
There's a lot of interesting, like you can speculate a lot on that.
Yeah. Well, like first of all, like this sort of relates to a general thing of just basic science in general, because, many people are like, oh, well, what's it going to give us? What's it going to apply? But one of the most fundamental things in basic science is you don't know what it's going to give you. You sort of need like deep research to be done in it. You need these large R&D projects that you don't know what the result is going to be in 5 years. Maybe
sometimes science fiction plays this role. Like certain science fiction books come true because people read them. Like there's not enough science.
For example, AI.
Yeah, there's like 100 examples of this, right? Yeah. So like even rockets and many things came out of science fiction.
Right.
And so I even think like maybe there's a role for science fiction to play.
Yeah.
Or you can maybe. I was thinking about like bringing bigger players, maybe like NVIDIA, if their GPUs can help.
Run simulations.
Live,
We'll
like
run simulations.
You need more serious simulations.
Yeah, for sure. That's very important. I think simulations, especially about the condensate model, would be helpful because we could like run molecular evolution simulations, and also simulate it under different conditions, like different distributions of length and free energy and sort of error rates and all kinds of things like that. We could try different things and also we could do things like calculate the probability of the origin of life, for example, which, and that's another question about like the nature of probability. But anyway, so that's I think would be a great idea, is getting sort of big players behind it.